Hello there and welcome to the weekly Outside Views report on Northern Irish politics. We all share the road and we all have the power to make difference when it comes to reducing the number of tragedies which claim lives and cause serious injury. That was the message last week from the Department for Infrastructure, or DFL, and the DFI and the Police Service of Northern Ireland after figures showed that during 2022, 55 people lost their lives as a result of road tragedies. That's 5 more than last year. Almost all road traffic collisions are caused by people, mostly drivers, behaving carelessly or inattentively, dangerously or simply ignoring the law. The main causes of collision continue to be driver carelessness, speeding, drink or drug driving. Failure to wear a seatbelt in the event of a collision increases the likelihood of death or life-changing injury. Provisional figures released this week by PSNI show that in 2022 there were 55 deaths on Northern Ireland's roads. 2021 there were 50 deaths on roads in Northern Ireland as a result of road traffic collisions. And this compares to 50 in 2021 and 56 in 2020. There have been 740 people seriously injured on the roads from 1st January to October 31st, and this compares to 627 people for the same period in 2021, and that's an increase of 113 people. A final total for 2022 will not be confirmed by PSNI until spring. The highest monthly death toll across the year was December, where 9 people died on the roads. The Department of Health this week published the next in the series of weekly results from its COVID-19 infection survey, or CIS. The findings set out in this report relate to model positivity estimates for Northern Ireland for the week up to December 7th. The aims of the CIS are to estimate how many people have the infection and the number of new cases that occur over a given time, as well as estimating how many people have developed antibodies to COVID-19. The survey over time will help track the extent of infection and the transmission of COVID-19 among people in the community population. That's those in private residential households. Due to the relatively small number of tests and positive swab results within the sample, credible intervals are wide and therefore results should be interpreted with caution. During the most recent week of the study, that's December 1st to December 7th, it is estimated that 37,000 people in Northern Ireland had COVID-19. And it's an interval there, of course. And this equates to 2.2% of the population, or around 1 in 50 people. But there's also an interval between 1 in 70 to 1 in 40 people. Modeling suggests the trend in the percentage of people testing positive was uncertain in the week ending December 7th in Northern Ireland. The next publication in the series is planned for release on January 6th. The Department of Health has been working along with the Public Health Agency, Northern Ireland Statistics and Research Agency, and the Office for National Statistics and its various survey partners to extend the COVID-19 infection survey to Northern Ireland. Fieldwork in Northern Ireland began on July 27th in 2020. All results are provisional and subject to revision. Due to relatively small number of tests and positive swab tests within the sample, credible intervals are wide and therefore results should be interpreted with caution, as I said. These statistics refer to infections reported in the community, and as I said, that's private households. These figures exclude infections reported in hospitals, care homes, and/or other communal establishments. Estimates of the total national proportion of the population testing positive for COVID-19 are adjusted to be representative of the population of Northern Ireland that live in private residential households in terms of age, sex, and region. Weekly reports are to be published with findings from the COVID-19 infection survey. It is anticipated that new and further analyses will be added to the weekly reports over time. The Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, the DERA, has last week published the 5th Rural Needs Annual Monitoring Report. The Rural Needs Act 2016 was introduced to help deliver fairer outcomes for rural communities in Northern Ireland by ensuring that the social and economic needs of people in rural areas are given due regard to by the public authorities. The Rural Needs Annual Monitoring Report provides a record of all rural needs impact. Assessments undertaken by public authorities and information on how rural needs have been considered by public authorities when developing and implementing policies and in the design and delivery of public services are included. DERA's Director of Rural Affairs, Teresa O'Neill, said about this, "The report demonstrates that the rural needs impact assessment and the process is now well established within public authorities, and that public authorities are taking steps to identify and address the particular needs of rural communities. Rural communities often face unique challenges due to geographical isolation, including poor quality broadband, increased transport costs, and difficulties in accessing public services, and therefore a different approach is often required to address the particular needs of people in rural areas to ensure that rural dwellers are not disadvantaged. DERA will continue to work with public authorities to help ensure that the Rural Needs Act 2016 is implemented effectively and delivers better outcomes for rural dwellers in the future." The special Brexit rules criticised by London are strengthening the economy in the British province of Northern Ireland. This is suggested by trade data and economic models. However, consumers in the former Civil War region must expect higher prices than in the theoretical case that the United Kingdom would still be part of the EU. The value of UK sales to Northern Ireland rose by 7% year-on-year in 2021 after the introduction of the so-called Northern Ireland Protocol, according to the Northern Ireland Statistics Office. Northern Ireland sales to the UK increased by 13%. Exports to the neighbouring EU member state of Ireland and to the other EU countries increased even more. Model calculations by the University of Sussex also showed that production in that part of the country would increase by 2.2% compared to the UK remaining in the EU. At the same time, however, the tariff barriers for British goods meant that consumer prices, again compared to remaining in the EU, rose by 4.3%. This will reduce overall economic prosperity by 2.4%. The BBC has to save because the British Tory government announced in January 2022 that it would not increase broadcasting fees for 2 years. Overall, the public broadcaster therefore wants to cut up to 1,000 jobs over the next 5 years. Almost 400 of these are no longer available at the International Service World Service, where, among other things, the language editing department in Persian and Arabic is to be closed. The austerity measures also mean that the children's TV channel CBBC and BBC4 will only be available online. Savings are also being made on the news. The domestic news channel BBC News and the foreign channel World News, which is also available in Germany here via satellite, will be combined from April 2023. Cutbacks are also being made on the local radio stations in England, where numerous local broadcasting routes are no longer required and which are to work more closely together. In Northern Ireland, and that's why I included it here, Radio Foyle and Derry would be particularly affected by the announced cuts. If the plans are implemented, local radio would have to do without morning shows and hourly local news in the future. That would remain was just a local afternoon service. There's resistance in the city and a Save Radio Foyle campaign has formed. Residents fear the announced cuts could spell the beginning of the end for Radio Foyle. And this concludes my weekly report on Northern Ireland politics. And as I mentioned in the other 2 videos today, I think it's important for people to know what happens in the different parts of the country that have their own parliaments. Even if one government is not in place at the moment, it is important not always just to have a slight summary or overview over everything just on a global stage. You have to go a bit more deeper into the parts of the country, and I think that's important. So I'll try to do this every Monday as long as there's content. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.